Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So in this video, I'm going to give my opinions on the upcoming Radiant Servant changes for Clerics. So on the official discussions forums, the developers posted what you're seeing here. They just posted it yesterday, and they're giving us a preview for the preview of the Radiant Servant changes. So they're posting some changes before it even goes to the preview server Lamania. So these are kind of a very early look, and this list of changes is probably will change some based on feedback. So just keep that in mind. I will link this thread below in the description. So yeah, let's just go through it and talk about it. So I'll be going through this post and flipping to the wiki some to just talk about the Cleric Radiant Servant tree a bit. So let's just get into it. So this is what Steel Star developer had to say. He says, "We're here to give you a first look at a pair of smaller revamps currently slated for update 50. These two passes are two quick sets of changes we did around other upcoming features we're working on. So while they may not be complete overhauls, we hope that they add some interesting build options and wanted to bring them to you ahead of the Lamani previews." So first of all, this is good. So this is not a complete overhaul. This is just like a quick pass, and this is something I've talked about in prior videos that I had hoped the developers would do more of this, just quick overhaul, so they could hit more of these enhancement trees and more things that need to be passed, and they could hit stuff quicker, because a lot of times in DDO there's been very years and years long lags between trees and other things in the game that have need to be updated. So hopefully so I applaud them for getting to this stuff faster. Now, let's continue. The second of these two previews is for the Cleric Radiant Servant tree. The other one is actually Shadar-kai, as mentioned above, which definitely very, very much needed an overhaul, but or needed a revamp, or just to be looked at. But anyways, this is what Steel Star continues to say. It's the primary healing tree for Clerics. Has a long history of bad bang for your buck. Almost everything costs 2 action points, meaning it costs close to 80 AP just to max out one tree. Some of the abilities are simply lackluster. Like we said above, these passes are fast, so while there are definitely other things we could improve in the future, we aim for changes that were both fast and would help address the issues above. The usual warning applies. This is early preview content and will likely change. Yes. All right, so let's just get into it. The first thing that's going to be changed is Pacifism. So this is the Core 2 in the Radiant Servant tree. It's being replaced with a Cure Moderate Wounds SLA. So this is what Pacifism is. Let's flip over to the wiki now. So Pacifism, it's basically a heal bot toggle. So if you toggle this ability on, you get 25 positive energy spell power and 3% positive energy critical chance, but have minus 50 spell power, and cannot critically hit with other spell damage types and deal -1 weapon damage. So basically it gimps your offensive casting and your melee ability in return for some extra healing power, which is, this wasn't terrible if you're heal botting a raid or something, but I think it's one of these weird abilities that most people didn't use the majority of the time, unless you were playing a heal bot cleric, but I never really used it, so I don't really care that they're taking this out. But let's swap back to their explanation here. So Steel Star says, Pacifism is an odd ability. While there are certainly builds that like it and use it, the ability to toggle it on and off made it not really fitting the flavor of the ability, and the trade-offs of the power didn't really matter much. And its position in Core 2 meant you had to take it even if you didn't want it. We went through a few iterations of trying to think of making something of it before scrapping it outright. Radiant Servants should have a lot of new points to put elsewhere after this pass, and the resulting build should be stronger even without Pacifism. So they replaced Pacifism with a Cure Moderate Wounds SLA in Core 2, which is 4 spell points, 6-second cooldown, which is, I think, is a pretty good trade. Cure Moderate Wounds, it's not an amazing cure, mass cure, but this is, again, Core 2, so it shouldn't necessarily be something that's going to be used all the time at, say, when you're at level 30 or anything, though it is kind of a nice low SP cost SLA, so it might be like a second or third heal you'll have in your lineup. So yeah, it's fine. I think this is, as mentioned before, this is a nerf for Healbot Clerics, I would say, just because they tend to have a lot of SP anyway, so that the Cure Moderate isn't really going to save them anything, and they probably would have rather had the positive crit chance and the extra positive spell power from Pacifism. But I think for Caster Clerics, it's obviously a buff, because the Pacifism ability before severely nerfed offensive casting ability, and for melee Clerics, it's kind of a whatever, because you know, the pacifism didn't have a, you could actually use it on a melee cleric because it did give you -1 weapon damage, but that's not, you know, -1 weapon damage is not all that significant compared to, especially compared to what the massive penalties it had for offensive casting. I never used it. I would rather have the 1 weapon damage, but you know, it's kind of whatever for melee clerics. So depending on what kind of cleric you're running, it could be an upside or a downside. So if you really ran a heal bot, you're probably not that happy. Although some of the positive critical chance that you're losing here, they are adding back in other forms in the tree later that we'll talk about. So it's not all bad. But let's continue on. But overall, for that, yeah, I say thumbs up. That's solid. It's a decent core 2 that I'll actually use. Next, Radiant Servant 6 core. So this is the capstone, now grants +4 wisdom instead of the +2 it was granted before. And then he goes on to say most of our core capstones now grant a total of +4 in ability scores. So this was just bringing it even. So yeah, this is awesome. So this is an additional DC, whether you're a caster cleric or you're using, say, like falconry trees for falconry attacks, whatever you're using your wisdom for, it's +1 DC, a little bit more spell points. So yeah, this is great, awesome. I always thought that the Radiant Servant capstone needed to be improved a little bit to make it a little more worthwhile. It was even though I took it, I was kind of begrudgingly took it before. It needed to be a little bit more attractive. So yeah, I'm glad it's got some love here. So let's continue on. Many enhancements in this tree now cost 1 AP per rank that used to cost 2 AP per rank. So this is great. This is one of the best things they're doing in this pass in terms of buffs for Radiant Servants. So Divine Cleansing, Mighty Turning, Bliss, Divine Healing, Intense Healing, Endless Turning, Positive Energy Aura, Cure Focus, Reactive Heal. These are all now 1 AP, which is wonderful. So it's now more AP that more abilities in the tree you get. Okay, continuing on, Extra Turning and Improved Turning are now combined in Tier 2. This is just another form of the previous improvements. So you get now more for less action points. Okay, so now a couple of new abilities. So new Tier 1 and Tier 3. We're getting Divine Aid, 2 different levels of it at 2 different tiers, which give you +2% positive critical damage. So we did lose, this is good to see, but we did lose some of this possible critical damage in the form of Pacifism if you're using that. So you're getting a net +1% gain here, although the core you kind of had to take to get to, say if you're going for the capstone, and this is going to be more optional, something you have to spend in addition, not kind of on your way to getting the core anyways. So I guess it's unforced point spending, but it's in any case, it's nice to see. Positive critical damage is wonderful. It's wonderful when your heals crit, although a lot of time you overheal, but for a lot of abilities, so like Aura and Radiant Burst, for example, the crits are very, very much welcome, and you're not necessarily overhealing, especially with Aura. So next, they disconnected the prerequisite chain of Divine Healing, Martyrdom, and Reactive Heal, which is nice to see. I still wish they would address some of these abilities. So Divine Healing, I don't see hardly anyone ever using that, just because basically what that is it's a healing tick, except that you can add to an ally, but the amount of healing is so low that I've never bothered using it. I don't know if anyone does either. Martyrdom is, in my opinion, an ability that really needs to be scrapped. It's an ability that heals and damages enemies around you when you die, but it's only takes effect when you die, which is silly because you're not, like, first of all, your characters shouldn't be dying very often, and the point of DDO, whole point of DDO is to not die. So I don't really understand why that ability works like that. I mean, for an ability to be only useful when you die, it's just something that I really wish as part of this pass, even though it was a quick pass, they would have scrapped this and replaced it with something else, because it's, in my opinion, useless, because it can only is used upon death. Finally, Reactive Heal, which is another lackluster ability in my opinion. I know some people like using it, but what that does is it applies a flat 250 healing to any target when they drop below 50%, and that's 250 that can't be improved in any way by positive spell power. So it's kind of a little bit of a safety net when you drop below 50%. I don't bother with it. I think some people like it, but for me, 250 is not really enough to bother with. Really, the really dangerous stuff in DDOs, the damage spikes, and 250, I don't know. I mean, I don't really like it, but in any case, it's nice to see that they disconnected the prerequisite chain, so at least those who do like Reactive Heal can use that without having to dump points into these kind of garbage enhancements, divine healing and martyrdom. So it's great to see that they've done that for players who want it. So maybe reactive heal is more attractive now since it's not as much of an AP sink to actually get to it. Okay, now this one, when I saw it initially, I really had my head scratching. So the next change they made was a tier 5 SLA, which they're adding a raised dead SLA, 15 spell points for 9-second cooldown, 1 AP. I am at a loss. When I first saw that, I was like, WTF? What's going on here? Because the thing is, this SLA would be good if it was for most any other class or even any other racial trees. But for Cleric, it's useless and no one's going to ever take this. I don't understand why they put this here. The thing is, they mentioned here, Steel Star mentioned that this is the same SLA that Beacon of Hope gets, so that's the favored soul healing tree in tier 5, but we felt it was an important tool for healing builds to have. Like, that's actually concerning coming from a developer, because it makes me feel like the developer who's designing this tree, I don't know which developer necessarily wrote this out, but I know it's Steel Star posting, but I don't know as a team who wrote that out. But it's kind of concerning because it makes me think that maybe they don't even play Clerics, because if you played Cleric, you would know that that's not true. This won't never be an important tool for healing Clerics to have, because unlike Favorite Soul, where it actually makes sense because Favorite Souls have very limited spell slots, Clerics get tons of spell slots. Clerics are equivalent to wizards in that way, and that they get tons of spell slots. So as a cleric, you have no problem slotting any of your raises. So if you're a pure cleric, you're going to have your true resurrection, and your raised deads already. You're not going to use this. Like, I wouldn't ever spend one spell point on this or one action point on this. So I'm not really sure what they're thinking here. Maybe if you're a splash and you don't get level 9 spells, I guess in that situation you wouldn't have true resurrection. So maybe it would be okay as a second raise. But I don't see, for pure clerics especially, I don't see this being useful at all. So I really don't understand this. If they want to have parity with Beacon of Hope, what they should do is, instead of a raised dead SLA, put in a heal SLA, which is what I hope they do here, is swap this SLA to a heal SLA, because that would actually be useful. It would actually save a significant number of spell points, which is something that clerics really need, because clerics get a lot less, if we're going to compare them to Favorite Soul, which I think a lot of people consider Favorite Souls to be the superior healers as of right now. Clerics getting less spell points than Favorite Souls could really use the heal SLA. And Favorite Souls get that as well. So if they want parity, then swap this for the heal SLA. I hope they make that change. But raised dead SLA, going to be completely useless. Maybe for like a splash build, it would be okay. But for pure clerics, it definitely, or any cleric with more than 18, with really more than, I would say 17 or higher cleric levels, probably going to be useless. Okay, let's continue on. This one is really cool. So, new tier 5 ability called Radiance. Activate. All allies in the dungeon, regardless of distance, gain the effects of the greater restoration spell and purges paralysis, stun, and knockdown trip. This can be used while crowd controlled. So that is amazing. I'm wondering if that also affects yourself, which I'm assuming from the way this is reading it does. So that means it's basically going to function like a Harper pin, effectively, except it targets all allies in the dungeon. Now, they did mention here that it seems to only work for paralysis, stun, and knockdown trip, so I'm assuming it wouldn't work for things like, say, Dancing Ball, but I would have to see, maybe test it out. I'm not sure if their wording is a little misleading there, but we'll have to see. But in any case, this is a really, it has a 1 minute cooldown, but this is still a really attractive reason to take tier 5 Radiant Servant. It's going to make you kind of the king of getting rid of crowd control from your allies. So that's awesome. I really have nothing to say on this one other than a thumbs up. That's really nice. I hope that, I guess the one thing, very, very minor, is I don't really like the name because of Radiance. I wish they would change the name, because Radiance is also the same name as items in the game that give you bonuses to light spell power. So I wish they would come up with something better. They could definitely come up with a better name, but that's minor. But I guess that's the last of Steel Star's post here. So a couple things, I guess the main thing that I wish they would reconsider here, other than the raised Dead SLA, which they should definitely get rid of the raised Dead SLA and replace it with the heal SLA. I hope they do that. Other than that, the one thing, and this might be kind of just me or selfish thing, but I really, really wish they would address Radiant Servant Burst a little bit, because Radiant Servant Burst doesn't it doesn't really heal for that much. I wish they would increase that, make it more of a viable healing ability. I guess because it is core 3, maybe it's not intended to be a great heal, but I know for me on my cleric at level 30 at cap, it doesn't even heal half of my own spell bar, not in Reaper, but just in regular, running around the public area. And I have every single SLA that you can add to it and a really high positive spell power, and it still doesn't even heal for like half my cleric's health bar. But yeah, that's just my quick thoughts, guys. So I guess overall, a lot of thumbs up, except the only thumbs down here is the raised Dead SLA. I think they need to definitely change that, because no one's going to take that, not even for 1 AP. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this. I might do another video going more in depth with Radiant Servant. It'd be interesting to see if they make significant changes. Maybe I'll make another video going over those. I hope they do take some of the feedback here and from this post here on the forums and make some positive changes. But guys, let me know what you think about this. I would be interested in reading that. That's going to be it for this video. You all have a good one. See you next time. Take care.